want to earn more? Work less and enjoy what you do each day. It's no secret, it can be done. This podcast with Dr. T will not only educate and inspire you, it will also teach you how to do more and be more with the time you already have. It will be like a shot of adrenaline straight into the heart of your business. Here is your host, Tyson Franklin.
Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of It's No Secret with Dr. T. With me today is a repeat offender. We have Dr. Fern Kazlow. Now, this is the third time that Fern's been on, but there's a reason behind it. When Fern was on way back in episode 38, we were talking about high performers live in the no doubt zone. When Dr. Fern Kazlow came back on episode 140, we started talking about branding mistakes. Now, this was a really, really big subject, and we started talking about the importance of branding, but also the top 10 branding mistakes that people make. Because it is so important, we only talked about the first two. So I recommend going back, listen to episode 140, but we're going to do a quick little overview of what the first two were. One was letting others define you, and the second mistake was not backing up your brand. So Dr. Fern, welcome to It's No Secret again for part two of this, which is going to be part two of a part three series on branding. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be back, and I'm excited to be talking about branding and branding mistakes. Funny, today I was looking at some articles that popped up on my Facebook feed, and one was a Forbes article, and I thought this is really timely. It talked about three top reasons. It actually talked about more than that, but the top three reasons that businesses fail. And we talked on the last episode that we did on branding about how key branding is to a business's success or failure.
Yeah.
And this Forbes article named it as the top three mistake, the top three issue that causes businesses to fail, listing it only after lack of character of the owner or the CEO or leadership. Number two was lack of vision. And the third was branding issues. So this is really key. It's foundational to business, and mistakes, it's something people just make. They don't, people are getting much more aware of branding. We've come a long way to understanding branding. Although if you ask somebody branding, you're going to get, answers about what it is all over the place. But people are starting to get more savvy about its importance.
And it's more than just a logo. People years ago used to think branding, I've got a logo, I'm branded. I've got a color, I'm branded. But there's so much more to it.
I've got my colors for my website. People have gotten much more savvy, much more sophisticated about branding, what it is and its importance. And yet we're still pretty new on that frontier, and a lot of mistakes are made. So we talked about two important ones on the last episode. One was letting others define you. And that stems from lack of knowledge. People just don't know enough about branding and all the aspects that need to be included when you're creating your brand. And two, personal issues that interfere with branding. And the problem with this is that if you don't define your brand, others are going to. Clients, colleagues, and your competition. And that runs people into trouble. The only time this doesn't happen is if you're lucky enough that your brand is really aligned, just unconsciously aligned with your vision, with where you're going. It just has fallen into place because you've done a lot of work prior to actually sitting down to brand your business. I don't want to call it luck because it usually is the result of earlier work. If that happens, you can be okay. But generally, if you don't consciously brand, if you let it just happen unconsciously from you, you create a vacuum where either some of your personal stuff will interfere or your competition, they're going to jump in and they're going to brand you. So it's really important that you take conscious control over your brand. So that's number one. And I want to say go back because we talked about this for an hour plus.
We did.
So, I'm just giving you not even the cliff notes. And number two is not backing up your brand. And the reason that's so huge is one of the big things of branding is a promise. It's a promise to your clients, to your customers about what they're going to get, who you are, what you stand for. And when you break that promise, you break the trust. And that is hard to get back. There are a lot of things that you can fix, but breaking a promise, that personally, if somebody breaks your trust, it's tough to get that back. So this is really important. It's important to have clarity, and it's important that you not sabotage your growth of your business by not backing up your brand, by breaking your brand promise. So I want to say go back and listen to the episode because we go into depth and those two things are key.
But the good part is we're going to cover probably 4 more points today. So if somebody's listening to this now and they're going, oh, does that mean I need to stop and go back and listen to the other 2? No, they can listen to these 4. You don't have to listen in any specific order.
Absolutely no specific order. In fact, it's not about order. These are 10 mistakes that people make, and a lot of them overlap. So, listen to this episode, and then when you can, go back and listen to the first one.
Well, even those first 2 that you just pointed out, like letting others define you and not backing up your brand. Well, if you don't back up your brand, you can let others define what you're doing if you're not defining it yourself. So those 2 are very closely related.
Exactly. All of these issues have a lot of overlap. In fact, when I thought about our podcast tonight, I was thinking about some of these issues and where they fit, which mistake. And I found I could have put them in a bunch of categories because there is a lot of overlap and there are a lot of issues that we have that affect more than one mistake. So not in order, but just, listen to that, listen to what we're talking about, see how they fit for you. I'd like this to be not just a listen to episode, but an episode that people really use, that they pull out their pens, unless they're driving their car, but, pull out pens, paper, or write on your computer. If you're driving, then just listen and go back later. It's an episode to do. It's an episode to take stock of your brand. If you've got one, if you haven't really worked on it, it gives you things to go back and look at and refine. And if you're just about to begin a business, any time is the right time to work on your brand. Brand is something you should work on every single day in business.
No, I think that's really important what you pointed out there, because a lot of people I've had on my podcast and other podcasts, they'll tell a story about their journey and things they've gone through, and you'll take away 1, 2, 5 or 10 takeaway points from it. But these particular episodes are really to-do episodes. Listen and then take notes and actually apply what you learn to brand your business better and yourself.
Exactly. And while, people say to me, what's the best time to brand a business? I'll say right from the beginning. As soon as you have the idea, start working on the branding. We'll talk about why, because the aspects that are actually included that people don't always realize are part of their brand. At the same time, if you've got a business going and you paid a lot of attention or you didn't, every day is a day that you can work on your branding. Every day is a day that you should work on your branding. Everything that you do, and we'll talk about this more later, strengthens or weakens your brand. So this is something that we should always be looking at. Is it a drag? Is it onerous? Absolutely not. It's just an integral part of business. And if you do it right, it should actually be fun. It should be keeping the brand fresh and you fresh. So it shouldn't feel like, oh, this is something that weighs me down. It should feel like something that is invigorating your business. And if it's not, when you do this, message one of us because we'll help you out with it. Something's not right. Something, unless you're kind of overwhelmed because you're looking at it and you're saying, yikes, I've got so much to fix. Branding should be fun. It should be fun. It should be enlivening. It should be something that enriches you and your business. So we weren't going there, but that's not a mistake on the list. But if it's getting you down and looking at it as feeling onerous, then something needs to be tweaked.
No, I could agree, because I used to look at branding when people say, oh, we're doing a talk on branding. I go, oh, bloody hell, not again. This is boring as batshit. I just think it was dull, because we all know about branding, logo, color, message, whatever. But the more I talk to you and the more we talk about branding, the more excited I get about it now, thinking, my God, this is actually a really, really exciting topic. It's just been delivered poorly by a lot of people in the past. But now that we're getting into it, I actually can't wait for the next. So let's get on to point number 3.
Okay, so number 3, right? So number 3 is not having an aligned brand strategy. And sad thing is lots of people don't have one. Good news is that you can always start working on it. You want an aligned brand strategy that can grow. That doesn't mean that you have to be rigid. It doesn't mean that you can't do different things, but your core has to be very clear. So for example, if I've had my business in a lot of different arenas. I've worked in business, I work in health, I work in relationships, but there's always a core that remains the same. My core, if you look at it, always has to do with new frontiers, no limits, being out of the box or not even having a box, embracing being different, doing what others say can't be done. That's one of my favorites. No BS, connection, caring. Whatever I do, those are some of the things that are central. And it's across the board. So there are going to be some things that are going to be central. And one of the reasons that branding is so tricky is, besides being misunderstood and what I said before about lack of knowledge and personal stuff, is this is kind of a fun one to me, is that as we're developing a business, as we're developing a brand, and as we're going day by day, we're always caught between who we've been and who we're becoming.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And okay, somebody posted yesterday on Facebook, in one of the Facebook groups on entrepreneurs, they said, has your business evolved? And I said, my business and myself, like, we're constantly evolving. So people are caught between who they've been to get to this point and what they're developing. And when you're developing a brand, you're really up to something big. Okay, as an owner, as an entrepreneur, it's very exciting, and it can be challenging. And one of the reasons that people often seek out help, or should seek out help, because you are in this pivotal place between where you've been and who you're becoming as you create this new brand. Does that make sense?
And that's businesses, and you see that with businesses that have become very stale, dull, and have fallen out of flavour with everybody. It's because they haven't grown, adapted, and the brand hasn't grown, adapted, and changed with new technology. Just what else is happening in the marketplace? They've become very stale, and then that's become their new brand.
Exactly. We're going to actually talk about how to know how much to brand this stuff on one of the mistakes. Interesting thing is, not only does the business get stale for customers and clients, one of the things that happens is the business gets stale for the owner.
Yeah.
And right, because they are evolving and they haven't brought the business along with them. So,
and does the team get affected by that as well?
What? Excuse me? Does their
team, the people that work with them, they would be affected as well?
Absolutely. It will affect everybody working with them. It'll reach out to the customers. All of a sudden, customers that were excited are not excited. So that's a really good point. As a leader, you need to be excited. It's going to ripple through your clients, your customers, your team. It's going to go, and actually it's going to leak onto your family, your friends, everybody that's around you. You'll see it in your marketing. It's going to have a lot of bleed through. So if you're getting stale, sometimes it means you're ready to go on to something else. Sometimes it might mean you're ready to sell your business, but most often it means that you need something's out of alignment. And you need to shift in your branding so that you and your brand continue to evolve and be fresh. So let's talk about some of the things that are important in an aligned brand. Okay, branding is, as we said some before, is about the identity we have and the way people perceive us. It's truly that intersection between those two. And that's why if we don't brand ourselves, someone else will. And if we don't properly brand ourselves and we find that other people are branding us in a different way, we need to go back and tweak our brand. We're not communicating correctly, because branding really is about connection. It's about communication. It's about relationship. Okay, really important: communication, connection, and relationship. So if people are not understanding your brand, then you need to go back and tweak something, how you're communicating, how you're connecting with your brand, what your relationship is, because they're not getting it. So clear messaging is one of the things people do talk about when you hear branding. They say, what's your brand message?
Yeah.
Now, often they try and do that in isolation, and they run into trouble because they get a brand message that's not connected to some of the other factors that you need to look at when you're developing a brand. So some of those are, what is your vision? Okay, what's your vision? So before you actually have a fully defined message, you need to be clear on your vision. Now, does that mean that you have to sit down for months and months? Probably not, but sometimes people come to me and they've actually had a vision for years and they weren't either ready to pull the trigger and do it, or it wasn't the time in their life or something. But you need a vision. That's that big picture. This is what I want to do with this business. This is what I'm here to do. It's that ideal space of this is my vision, my big vision. Now, then you need a mission. And people say, aren't they the same? No, they're actually not. The vision is that big picture. This is what I would love to accomplish. The mission is who I want to accomplish it with.
Okay.
What I want to actually do. How I want to do it. So we're getting down to more of that, what's it about? More specifics, a little bit more concrete, or a lot more concrete. So before you get to your mission, to your message, you need to understand your vision, your mission. And then what about benefits? People will often have benefits that first they very often confuse features and benefits. This is the feature of my product or what I want to sell. Like, who cares? People want to know that old what's in it for me. They want to know what that benefit is. And they want to know the benefit of the benefit. What does that mean for their life? What does that mean for their emotional life? So it's not just about the benefit. It's about what is that going to mean? If I can do something quicker, what does that mean? Well, for some people, it's going to be more time with their family.
Okay.
For other people, it's going to be more time for taking care of their health, not feeling so stressed. So you want to look at, for your audience, okay, you've got to know, remember, in your mission, who am I talking to? So, for example, I talk to high-performing entrepreneurs and experts. That's who I talk to. And I need to, when I talk about no doubt zone or shattering limitations, why is that important to them? I could say that's a benefit. Why is that important? And from there, so if you're taking notes, it's vision, it's mission, it's benefit, okay, and emotional benefits of the benefits, and then positioning. That's the place where you say, what's different about me? What's different about my service? What's different about our relationship? What does my product or service do better than anybody else? What's the flavor? And we know lots of people are going to do many things that are similar, but nobody does it in the same way. So to communicate that difference, you really have to look at it. You have to be very conscious about your positioning. You don't want to be accidentally positioned. You want to create your positioning. And that leads to something when we're going to talk also more about influence. And when you're deciding to be an influencer in your field, in your industry, in your arena, why do you want to be an influencer? It impacts your impact. Being an influencer gives you greater impact and income.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference, right? So how do you position yourself? And we're going on. If you're starting to see that this is not just a simple sit down and get a brand message. These are the layers. And as you said, this is kind of fun. If you look at it and you see, why am I excited about it? Why do I think I'm the person to do it? Next, one that a lot of people get nervous about is, what's your proof?
So is this still part of part 3?
Oh, yeah, this is still part of part 3.
This is still part of 3. Part 3 is huge.
Part 3 is huge because you have to have an aligned brand strategy.
Yeah.
You have to have your message, but your message is made up of your vision. It comes from your vision, your mission, your benefits, your positioning. We're not done yet. Your proof. And some people say, what if I'm new? Well, there's still ways, and that's like a deeper question, but there's still ways to get proof if you're new. If you're not so new, you have proof in your customers and your clients and your testimonials.
Yeah.
But if you're new, you can have proof in a problem being a problem. You can look and see what in my arena has been proven to be a problem. What has not worked? What is it that your clients say? I always tell people, when they're developing their brand, when they're developing their marketing, go out and talk to your ideal client.
Yeah, definitely.
Because what we think is often not what they think. It's going through our filter. It's also fun. If you like your customers, which if you don't, you're probably in the wrong arena, then going out and listening to them, developing a brand. A brand starts with us because it's our thing, but it really is about them, our audience, our customers, and the relationship between us. So it's really important. You can have what you think is a great idea, but what if nobody wants to pay for it? What if nobody understands it the way you're expressing it?
That's a really good point, because I've seen people in a lot of different industries develop a product. They're damn excited about it, and they get out there and no one wants it. They've spent all this money developing something and nobody wants to buy it. And they never ask the market first, does anybody actually want this particular widget?
Exactly.
And
it's so critical.
because they thought everyone wanted it, but they realized, you know what? We don't want it because we've already had 5 in the past and everyone has one.
And the other part of that is when you're talking to people and you ask them about, I always ask people, what's your problem? What have you tried? What do you think would help you? I want to find out what they want, because sometimes they have no interest and it's like you just have to say, okay, no. Sometimes you learn that you have to express it differently, that the way you're talking about the benefits is not what they see as the benefits, or the way you see the problem isn't the way they see the problem. So sometimes you have to scrap it. Sometimes you find out you're right on the money. And other times you find out that you need to either reposition it or talk about the benefits in a different way that will connect with your audience.
Yeah.
So really that step of talking to people, it's huge. And it's not like people say, well, I don't want them to find me. Well, tell me what what they want. I want to create what I see. Well,
When you're actually working with clients, do you say this is part of what you need to do? You need to go out into the marketplace and you need to talk to people and answer these questions before you put too much time and effort into developing your product or service?
You bet. I was talking to a new client this morning, and exactly one of the things that I told her that we needed to do was we needed to set up some specific questions that she needed to write first, her own vision, her mission, her benefits, get that what she thinks it is, and then create questions that will not use her own, that'll leave it more open so she can really hear them and come from a place of listening. And that's one of the things that I have all of my clients do is go out and talk to your market. I do it.
So when you're talking about proof, it's not proof that your product, you're trying to find proof that your product, service, or idea is wanted by the market. That's what you're trying to figure out.
Okay, so proof has different things. A great point. So proof comes up at different points. When you're selling a product, you do want proof if you've got testimonials. A lot of times I'll have people do like a beta, where they'll do a test run, let people into a group if they're a consultant, do a small run of product so that people get to experience them. So sometimes you want proof of the actual product, you want testimonials. Somebody sent me a course the other day and they said, Dr. K, would you please do this course and see if it helps you? If it does, I would love to have you endorse it, but I want you to really try it and see what works for you and doesn't. And I'd love your honest feedback. But proof also comes in proving that what you're going after is indeed a problem. I may think something's a problem for my market. They may not see it that way. I may see something as a solution, and they may feel like that's the most boring thing they've ever heard. So it's all of these aspects of, do they agree on the problem? So proof is like different steps of our process. You're going to have proof meaning different things. Okay, when you've got a business, you're looking at proof that it's still relevant, proof that people are finding it useful. You want testimonials. You want numbers if it's something that you can actually quantify. But in the beginning, you want proof that this is something that's going to go. This is something that I ask people to find out what's it worth to them to solve that problem? What format would they like the solution in?
Yeah.
How do they want that? So there's a lot of things in that proof. So you asked a really, really good question. A couple of others before we go to number 4. So you're going to say, are we done yet? No, we're not done yet. Okay. We're not done yet.
Yeah, well, this is the third time we've been on the podcast together, but we've spoken a lot between podcast episodes, and I know you're never done. It's just, I know you're never done. So keep going. No, like I said, I'm enjoying
what you just said is part of my brand. My brand is that I go deep. My brand is that it's not superficial. I'm not the person who wants the, one and done, quick, wham, bam, that's it. I'm somebody that wants to go deep, that wants to delve, that wants a solution that is going to, that's going to make a difference. That's going to be meaningful. It's going to work. So yeah, it's not a surface, and not done, because we can grow more. We can do all kinds of things with our business. And most of us that are here to have a big purpose, like I know you and me and people that we both work with, they're always growing. So other stuff comes up. So a couple of other things to talk about. And as you know, you could do a whole workshop on vision. You could do a whole workshop on benefits or positioning. All of these things could be, a workshop. They could be a course. And I want to give them to people, not to say, get overwhelmed, but to say, work with these things. I don't care. Your mission statement can be a couple of sentences. Your vision statement can be a sentence. But you've got to think about that as you're working with your messaging and you're getting clear on your brand. Okay? It doesn't have to be onerous, but you do have to do it, and it's going to change. You are going to revisit it. One of the things I do is I use Evernote a lot, and I make sure that I have reiterations of things that I'm doing, and I always date them. I date them, I update them, I look back on them, and I mark them again. So, one of the things you want to look at also with all of this is your brand personality. So, I was listening to one of our podcasts, and on the podcast, we were talking about some way that I'd handled something, and you said to me, "You're kind of fiery. I can tell that." I don't know if those are exact words, but you remember calling me fiery?
I've probably said it a few times, yeah.
So that is part of my brand personality. Okay, people don't usually describe me, even though when I work with somebody and I do therapy sessions, I can, believe it or not, I can be calm, I can be meditative, but it's not part of my brand personality. Being fiery, being dynamic, connecting, being deep, pushing the limits, those are part of my brand personality. My client this morning that I was just speaking about, part of their brand personality is being adventurous.
Okay.
They've got a sparkle. I've got a sparkle. It's a very different kind of sparkle than their sparkle. So we're working on what their brand personality is. And when they talk about addressing a problem that so many people talk about, we were bringing their brand personality both to differentiate them, to position them so that they will like their business, because otherwise they won't. They
Yeah.
would not like my business. I would not like their business. I mean, I like hearing about it, but it wouldn't be a fit. And so that they will actually attract the clients. And I was talking about how when they work with different clients, if they have a client more like me, the way they have to work with them as opposed to a client that's more like them, where adventure is one of the key things. Now, I'm adventurous, I'm a risk taker in some ways, but it's a very different positioning. So you have to look at, what is your brand personality? Is it soothing? Is it sexy? Is it ethereal? Is it grounded? Is it practical? So developing a brand personality is really important. Very, very important. Then, a little different, is your brand story. Okay, this is what people need to, taking notes for this would be really good.
And this is still all part 3.
This is aligning your brand strategy. Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
Okay. So you want your brand, we could do a whole thing on number 3, aligning your brand strategy, but we're going to just mention some of these. So your brand story, you want to share your story. People, we hear this more and more. They love stories. They love stories. They want to connect. They listen in a whole different way. So you need to develop your brand story. Why are you doing this? How does it relate to you? So, some of the brand stories of some of my clients, they've had bad medical care. They didn't have a good education. They bought products that just basically sucked, and they felt ripped off. They wanted to do something different. They wanted to make a difference. They talk about how they grew up, and making a difference in the world was something they grew up with from the time they were a young child. So your brand story is something that people are going to remember, they're going to relate to, or not. And part of having a brand, and we'll get to this in one of those later numbers, is who you're for and who you're not for.
Yeah, that's really important.
Right? Who you're for and who you're not for. And that was another thing that I worked on with this client this morning, is who do you like to work with? Who don't you like to work with? Okay, very, very important. Who do you want to attract? Who do you want to repel? Not in a negative way, but you want it to be clear. Who are you for? Who are you not for?
That's really important, because I think some people, they try to please everybody and they end up pleasing nobody because they're too beige, and nobody
They end up having an insipid brand.
Yeah, nobody relates to them because they're not relatable to anyone at any level. So
Right.
I really like that part about telling your story, especially the personality. And you know what I'm like a little bit. There'd be certain people that I do coaching with that like me for the way that I am, and there'd be other people that would go, Tyson, we want to stay as far away from you as possible because of just my personality. But I think they're two things that people do not bring into their business enough.
Mm-hmm. And you want to know that sooner than later. I don't want to
Yeah.
know it when I have a client who's paid me a lot of money and is now down the road disgruntled because I'm not the flavor for them. And before I take somebody, I always look at, are we a fit? Will I enjoy working with them? And people say to me, well, you have that luxury, that you can choose your clients. And it's true. At this point, I do have that luxury. I think it's something that we have to be planning for. People say, well, in the beginning, I can't do that. To a certain extent, you can't. To a certain extent, you need to, because it's going to come out in the quality of your work. It's going to come out in your brand flavor. So repelling who you're not for. And you don't have to do it in an obnoxious way. Some people do it in a way that's obnoxious.
Yeah.
That's not part of, of my brand. It's not part of your. But I want to be very clear. I am for people who like to move and like to move quickly. Not superficially, but quickly with depth. I am not for people. There are a lot of people that are really good for somebody who wants to be soothed and go very slowly and, move at a very different kind of pace. I'm not the best person for them. I'm much more for the go-getter that wants to go big, that wants to go deep, wants to go there in the quickest way that they can and accomplish what their goal is. So to know who you're for and who you're not for, and to have that come through in your branding so that the people who resonate with you will be drawn to you and the others just kind of won't.
What I think is important, one thing I think is really important what you said then is when you said that, you're in a position now that, some people say, oh, Dr. K, you're in a position now that you can do that. And I might be in a position now that I can do that, but it's like every person I talk to in business who is now in that position that they can really let their personality shine and they really know who their target market is. It was only until they actually realized that success sort of came faster.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons that I want people to think about that. You could not figure it out for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And really, some people, it takes that long. Or if you do the groundwork, if you sit down and work with this kind of process, you can find out much quicker. And then you will be an attractor of the kind of clients. I'm not saying, just sit down and think about them and they will come. Okay, you know that. I'm that action. But the more clear you are, the more clear your message is going to resonate with the people that want what you have. And you also just won't waste a lot of time with the market that's not right for you. It'll be very, very clear. So that's huge. You can really shorten that span. So a couple other things before we go on to the next one.
Yeah.
You got your brand story. You want to be speaking as part of your messaging in a language that's accessible to your audience. This is really key. So you may have a lot of education, but if you are looking at an audience that is not as sophisticated and you talk in your, graduate school or whatever voice that you might speak to colleagues in, they're not going to connect with you. So I'm not saying to not be authentic. Okay, I'm saying be authentic, but be authentic to your audience. Talk about what's of interest to them in a language, both an emotional language and a mental language that suits them. Even a physical language. And this is why knowing your audience, we're going to talk about this more and more, is really key. Some audiences love physical contact. Okay, some target markets love that. They love shake your hand, a hug, warmth, more gushing. Others are much more formal.
Yeah.
So you've got to know your market. If you're what your market would consider standoffish, that's not going to work so well. If your market is more, touchy, is more shake hands, happy to see you, more effusive, and yet if your market is more reserved and you go in like that, it's not going to work either. So I want to be really clear that authenticity is huge in all of this. I'm not saying don't be yourself, but be yourself in a way that's going to mesh and think relationship.
So when you're talking language, it's not just the words you use, it's your body language, it's the way you present yourself. It's what you're saying about yourself and your brand through words, audio and visual.
It's exactly that. I just came back from a speaking event in Austin. And one of the things that was very interesting to me was that when I got off stage, I had a whole bunch of people come up to me. And what they said to me was really interesting. They said, as soon as you got on stage, we knew that you were different. we knew this was different. And I said, how did you know that? Because I hadn't opened my mouth yet.
Yeah.
And they said, we just knew. And this wasn't one or two people. This was a bunch of people. And one was the AV person who has seen a lot of speakers. So it was very, meant a lot to me to have an AV person come over and say, Dr. K, I just want to tell you, as soon as you got on stage, you impacted me. You impacted the audience. So how do you do that? That really is about body language. It's about intention. There were a lot of things that I do so often that they're automatic. They're so ingrained in who I am. Now, did that happen the first time I was on stage? Surely not. And in many times, I used to actually think before I went on stage about some of these things very consciously. Now, it's so strong that just my physical presence, my energetic, when I walk on stage, is now communicating a lot of my brand before I even open my mouth to speak.
So I have one question for you. When you do go up on stage, do they give you a time limit, or do they just go, Dr. K, you can talk for as long as you want? Everyone goes, oh, this is going to be different.
Okay. Okay, you won't be surprised that the speaking event I just came back from, they gave me more time than anybody else.
It doesn't surprise me.
I actually did something that was different. Most people gave a speech, and I gave an interactive workshop. And then one of the fun things was that I actually continued. I had a lot of people that I had a meeting with afterwards. So we had a lot of fun. We really went deep. But yeah, the person that was running the workshop, I had been a guest at her mastermind monthly for the year before. She knew me, she knew what I delivered, and she put me in a time spot and in a position that she felt would be best for me in the audience. So she said, we're giving you more time than anybody else, and I want you to really work with the audience, not just talk to them, not just give them a speech. And there were a lot of great speeches, but she said, I want you to get in, roll your sleeves up, and work with the audience. And
I ran an event in Cairns 2 years ago, and I had a friend who I really wanted to speak at the event, but I know when it comes to timing, he always has so much to say, and it's always really valuable. But I thought, I can't put him as first speaker in the day, because I know once he gets on this role, it's hard for him. You can't just cut him off. So I made him last speaker on the day. And it ended up working perfectly, because he went half an hour longer than I'd sort of planned. But what he was talking about was great. But there's no, so you just, I think when people know, and this comes back to your brand personality, when you know what somebody is like, and they understand what your brand is all about and how valuable it is, then they know where to put you in events, just like it's a speaking event.
Well, it's interesting because they wanted somebody who'd keep the audience awake at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I was last speaker of the day. I only went over 2 minutes. Okay, only 2 minutes. So that was pretty good. But then I actually had almost 25% of the audience asking for me to do another meeting over the weekend.
That's great.
So that was really cool. But yeah, I kept it to 2 minutes over.
Okay, we better keep moving.
So let's go to number 4. So number 3, you need number 3 before you touch the others. This one is probably of the ones we're going to talk about today the most. They're all important, but this is really key because this is setting your brand strategy.
Yeah, because you said we were going to talk about, we were going to go over 4 points today, and you said one of them was the big one. So number 3 was the big one. That was the one you were mentioning before. Okay.
So next one is power connecting. And people say, what is power connecting? What does that got to do?
So this is number 4.
This is number 4.
Okay.
Number 4.
Power connecting.
Okay? Power connecting. So this is where this one is about relationship, and this is one that makes you a beacon, that draws your clients, your audience to you. And it is about, it's really that place where your vision, your market, your marketing, all of those things you're connected with, and they're connected with you. It's not a one-way street. Okay. So this, as I said before, it starts with you, but it's about them, and it's about that relationship. So you could say, this is what our product does. You could say, this is what our product can do for you. Or this is what you can say, which is, to me, the most powerful. This is who you can become with our brand.
Okay.
Okay, so just think about that one for a minute.
This is really powerful.
With our brand. And that only happens when you have a powerful connection. when you're leading, when you're understanding the relationship. Because if you're not powerfully connecting, if you're not power connecting through your brand, not only will you not be a beacon, but they won't understand what you do or why they should care. They don't know what it has to do with them. So it's one of the mistakes that people fall into is they tell people about the product. Sometimes they say, this is what I can do for you, but they don't go deep enough. They don't go to, this is why it's important. This is what it's going to give you. This is who you can become. You can become a great father with our brand. This is going to save you time. That's going to give you more time to help your kids with their homework or to go out and play basketball with them. They don't go to that next step. So you need to power connect. You need to really understand deeply what's important to them. And so if you have that clear brand strategy, and then you take that and you work with relationship, powerfully connecting in your relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, powerfully connect with your vision. And it's the place where your vision and their vision is always that intersection, that relationship. Okay, your target market, where do you connect with them? Where do they connect with you? This is where you look at your marketing. Is your marketing powerfully connecting, or is it just more noise in their world? Okay, this is super important. So who are you? Who are they? How do they perceive you? It actually happens in the space between you and them. So it's not just about you. It's not just about them. It's about that space that interacts between you and between you and you as your brand and your market.
Okay.
And that's a place. I asked a client today, I said, what is it that you look for in a mentor? And they wanted to be understood and they wanted to feel cared about. They didn't want to feel that it was just about money. They wanted to feel. And I said, how do you know that? And then they gave me some ways that they know it. Well, that's the way you communicate your brand. And it doesn't matter whether you're a consultant or whether you're selling a widget. It can come through in your brand. It can come through in your customer service. All the way from leadership to everybody working in a company, that value gets communicated. So this is really huge. Branding is about relationship. And why should they care? Their wants, their needs. They want you to know what keeps them up at night. We say that all the time. What keeps your client up at night?
Yeah.
Few people really know, except in the most superficial way, not only what keeps them up at night, what it feels like when they're up at night. What does that feel like? What are their villains? What prevents them from finding a solution? One of the questions I ask people all the time is, why haven't you figured this out? Not in a way that is judgmental, but I want to understand, why haven't they figured it out? I want to understand if they've tried other things, why they haven't worked for them. And it's not only in my arena as a consultant and a mentor. When I'm working with a client, for example, let's say they're selling mattresses. I want them to ask their clients or potential clients, what's been wrong with the mattresses so far? There's a gazillion ones out there.
Yeah.
Why haven't they worked for you? Headphones. What don't you like? What do you like? What do you wish would be the ideal headphone? In your ideal world, what would headphones look like for you? And why haven't you found them yet? Again, not in a judgment like, what's wrong with you? Why haven't you found it? But in a way, what's been missing? What's that piece that's really important? So you want to understand them and their backstory.
And I think when you're talking about a product, for example, like you're talking about headphones and a mattress, but I think if you're in a service industry, it's even more personal, that relationship, between if you're a coach and a coaching client, or if you're in the health industry and you have a patient, or or a client or a customer. Not just looking at the superficial, what is it that keeps them up at night, but then how does that affect other things? It's not just that superficial question. It's going deeper.
Exactly. It's like that emotional. It's like if you could sleep at night, how would that affect the rest of your life? How would that affect your family, your health, what else would it affect that I'm maybe not even thinking about?
Yeah.
So it's not about me. It's about really understanding them. It's exactly what you want to do. You want to go deep in having that understanding. So that's very, very important to create that backstory and for them to feel that you understand them. And that doesn't matter whether you're selling a mattress, a headphone, a mentoring service. I had a dentist recently. I made the appointment I was calling a number of dentists around trying to find a new dentist. And the dentist that I eventually made an appointment with was the one that said to me, I look at the whole person. I don't just look at the teeth. I really take that whole person into account. That was the only dentist that said that to me. I'm really a dentaphobe. I work with dentists. Personally, I'm like, I've got a.
So do I.
Yeah. So not a good dental patient. And when he said, I take the whole person into account, that's when I made the appointment. He wasn't the cheapest. And some of the things he did were exactly the same as some of the other dentists I was talking to. But one of the things that's important to me, I know other people who say, I'm just important. I just care that my doctor, my dentist is the best at what they do. I say they need to be one of the best and they need to connect with me.
Yeah.
I need to feel that they're responsive. So that's me. So you need to understand that. So create a persona, understand, and have an underlying reason for your brand that you're going to connect at the deepest and the most important levels. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to go like, saying, what is it? Well, we don't have to go into what they do on the mattress. Maybe that's not the most relevant thing.
Yeah.
Maybe you may get some things about what they do on the mattress and what works and what doesn't. We might have to go there, but it's about really addressing what's important to them. So that is number 4. You have to be a power connector. And that's not just, it's with yourself, so you understand where you are and where you're not. It's the market, it's your brand, it's their needs, it's the marketing. It has to be on every level that connection is there. Okay, that's number 4. We could go on, but I think that gives us a base.
No, I think that's good. Number 5.
Okay. Number 5, infuse your branding every place. Okay. One of the things that I remember hearing, Starbucks has been having a branding crisis as they're torn between the space of being a place that's really comfortable to go. You can sit down. You can buy a cup of coffee and use the bathroom and know it's clean. In fact, I used to hear that Starbucks was so about quality that everything down to their toilet paper was spec'd.
Okay.
Now, you go into Starbucks, since they've had a policy of anybody goes in, they're having a much harder time as they have more traffic, keeping the bathrooms clean. They're having a branding crisis. It sounds funny, like, the bathrooms, but your branding has to be infused every place. If it's not, people may oh, it's not so clean at Starbucks like it used to be.
It's funny you mentioned that. Like the last few years, we've done a lot of travel. We've gone on boat cruises, and I was doing a walking challenge and shooting videos and having to upload things. So when you're going through Asia, Starbucks was like my beacon of light. Everywhere I traveled to, I went to Starbucks because the internet was good. It was clean. Everything you were saying about it. We were in Bali only a couple of months ago, and there was a Starbucks in Sanur where we stayed. Had been there previously, a couple of years before that. We went in there this time, and it just didn't feel the same. The tables were a little bit dirty. There didn't seem to be as many staff. We waited longer to get a drink. I'm not sure if I went to the bathroom or not. But when I was there 2 years before that, we went there nearly every day at least once. This time we were there for 8 days. We only went in there once, didn't really enjoy it, and we went somewhere else.
Yeah, so that's a perfect example. And sometimes it's clear, like we just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't so clean. The service wasn't so good. Other times it's not even conscious. You just don't realize what it is, but it's not speaking to you in the way that it did before.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was like with us. It was just at the time, we just went, I've been just not enjoying it in here as much. But now that I think back to what you just said, there were a number of things that actually happened in our visit that went, there's other coffee shops down the street that were nicer, cleaner, friendlier. So that's where we went.
Yeah, it's true, because I think that's the story for a lot of us. In New York, I always looked for the more different coffee shop. But when I traveled, I always looked for the Starbucks because I knew what I could count on, and it's not the same. And so infusing your branding, it's cleanliness, but it's way beyond that. If I use the example, when I opened my holistic health and business center in New York City, my branding was infused throughout. So I was doing something that was really on the edge, which is part of my brand.
Yeah.
Integrative healthcare, integrative holistic business, those things were just not done when I opened my center. So part of my brand is also that it's deep, that it's steeped, that I do have, an academic and strong credentials. So I made sure that my center both felt cutting edge, but also felt steeped in things that people respected, in things that people could count on, and things that people could trust. My center was filled with some modern things, but it was filled with antiques. It didn't have fake things. It didn't have things that felt like they were fake antiques. They were either more modern or they were truly antiques.
Yeah.
And I set my waiting room to be comfortable, but to still have that feeling of trust, to have that feeling of quality. Different rooms had different purposes, but I infused that brand. Part of my branding was about really caring about my clients. Way before it was the thing to do to have bathrooms that were, handicapped accessible. I was, center, small center, not like a huge hospital. I had a handicapped accessible bathroom. That just wasn't done then. I had one patient who had lupus, who was in a wheelchair. Could she have gone someplace else? She could have, but the way I was branded, I wanted to make sure that she could be comfortable and we're talking about bathrooms again, but
Yeah.
bathrooms kind of key. I wanted to make sure that she could feel respected and that she could be comfortable. And I was sending a message all the way back when I had my center, before people were doing it, that was something that was important. So you want to infuse your branding in everything. So it's not only that your colors are going to be a certain way, and my colors were, it's not that you don't think about colors. Okay, my colors, we know they're red, they're black. Those are colors that are identified with me. My office was red with a navy.
Does this come back to the patient, client, or customer experience? When they're actually in your business, the customer experience ties into point number 5.
Every part of it. When I had my office manager, the way my office manager spoke to people, we had a setup that was not cold. It was really warm, but there was privacy. So we had a special way that they could come in to the business office and talk in privacy, and the way the windows were set up. My offices, all of the offices had, people laughed at me. I had the contractors do extra soundproofing. He joked that my walls were going to fall down because I were putting so much soundproofing, and I put things around the doors to add extra soundproofing.
Yeah, that's one thing I'll say about just what you were talking about then, about going the extra yard for the soundproofing, is hairdressing salons. Yeah, like to me, the relationship you have with your hairdresser is sometimes very, very personal. Yet they just whack you out there in the open, and they're doing things to your hair and putting your hair in different places, and you look like a complete idiot sometimes. Yet there's no... I'm yet to see a hairdressing salon that doesn't have like private cubicles that the person can be in there and they can actually openly talk to their hairdresser, because like I'll sit in there and I listen to other people's conversations because you can't help it sometimes. And I think if a hairdresser could actually have some private cubicles, could work really well.
Actually, we do that in New York.
They do?
Most of them are opened, but some of the salons that cater to celebrities will have private cubicles. So that is a great point. But it's interesting that brands of salons, they totally will attract certain clientele. So
Yeah.
you want to infuse your branding, everything from your stationery, from your signature, your tagline, the way your staff treats people. Every part of that experience is part of the brand experience. What you post on social media, that's huge. Again, that could be a subject for a whole,
Yeah, definitely.
But people mess up their brands. Sometimes people are like, your clients are aware of it. Sometimes they're not aware of what they're reacting to, but they're feeling it and it's influencing them. So we need to be conscious of all of the messages that we're giving off. It doesn't mean that you can never be spontaneous. It doesn't mean that you can't be authentic. You have to be in alignment. with what your purpose is, what your mission is. You've got to do it in a way that is going to be that's going to be received. I mean, one of my favorite stories is my husband. He was doing acupuncture very, very early in New York, and he actually started doing massage and shiatsu, which is a Japanese form of massage, and came from the hippie days
Yeah.
and used to wear drawstring pants. And my kids still make fun of this. We don't have it anymore, but we had a butterfly t-shirt, right? And his clients, they saw him a certain way. When we opened our center and he had more people coming in, and again, he was now, he was doing acupuncture now, which was different than doing massage. And acupuncture was new, and people were more nervous about it. And we were doing a mind-body center when people now, everybody shakes their head, mind-body connection. But when we started, it was not something people shook their head about. It was something people were very suspicious of. It was kind of voodoo-ish. And sticking needles in people was a whole other thing. So my husband started wearing, who was behind this one. He started wearing not suits, because that wouldn't have been him, but he started wearing, dress pants and a jacket, and he started presenting a different image. Now, some of his early patients were a little bit like, it was jarring for them.
Well, it's like now, we call it big boy pants. He decided to start wearing big boy pants.
Big boy pants, right? Today we call it big boy. Right, it is. And it's interesting because it was important for infusing a brand of trust and respectability and something that people were used to seeing while we were introducing something new. So that's another awareness in branding. As you're bringing something new in, you have to also be aware of things that people are comfortable with. So some of my husband's old patients were a little bit like, what's happened to him? But the bulk of who came in and was new, they felt much more comfortable. Today, he has more leeway in what he wears because what he's doing is not something that he has to prove. We're going back to proof. He doesn't have to prove it that way. Still don't see him wearing shorts. It's not his thing. And it's not like in New York, you wouldn't see that so much in New York City. His office is in Midtown. So you have to infuse your brand, and your brand is going to shift. So there are going to be brand shifts, but you have to infuse your branding, and you have to be conscious of those messages. And when I did it in my center, it was every detail. It was the office manager. It was the way people talked to the office manager and how they could have privacy. It was my bathrooms. It was every aspect. I infused my branding. Not inauthentic, but very authentically who I was, who I felt they were, and it reflected the respect and everything that I wanted my brand to reflect. So we have one more.
Yep,
right?
one more. Number six for this particular episode.
Okay, so number 6 that we're going to talk about today, and that is failure to lead your brand.
Failure to lead your brand.
Mm-hmm. Failure to lead your brand. So you could say, isn't that the same as the one before where you let somebody else set it up? This is a little bit different. This is where you've actually may have set your brand up, but then you drop the ball. So maybe you didn't set it up at all. You failed to lead it. You failed to define it. It can overlap the earlier things. Or it could be that you set them up and then you didn't execute. You didn't stay on top of it. You weren't looking at your brand. You weren't asking your customers or clients, how am I doing?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So what you're saying is, in like number 2 was letting other people sort of define what your brand was. What you're saying in here is you've set your brand up, you've got it there, you know what it is, you've gone through all the other steps, you've put it out there to the market, and then you've sat back and rested on your laurels, and haven't constantly. Where you say, for example, your waiting room might have beautiful magazines. You haven't kept an eye on how are they looking? Are they dog-eared? Pages torn out? Are you replacing them? Just little things like that which eat into the brand over a period of time.
Exactly. I mean, it makes often an unconscious impression, but it makes an impression. So it's like even now, where they're talking about, I never liked the dryers that people used, in bathrooms. We're back to bathrooms. When a company has now changed them out in accordance with the research that they're not so helpful.
Oh, those the blowers in bathrooms, the hand.
Blowers in bathrooms.
I hate those things.
Yeah.
Give me a paper towel.
Mm-hmm. And you used to find it very hard to find paper towels. Now that the research has been out a lot of places, I pay attention to a restaurant, to a department store that I know how to blow for and now has paper towels. I feel like there's a consideration there, that they're paying attention to research, that they're caring about clients. So failure to lead your brand. You have your brand, you've looked at your mission, you've looked at your vision, you've got your brand story, your personality, but you're not leading it. You're dropping the ball. And that affects trust. Your vision starts to falter. You're not executing, you're not building it, you're not growing it. And so when you don't keep doing that, it is going to erode. Just what you said, like those earmarked, magazines in the waiting room.
Yeah.
If you're not keeping it up, if you're failing at the leadership, so the brand leadership is key. If as the leader of your brand, you're not doing it, why are your salespeople? Why are your people that make deliveries? They're not going to lead. They're just not going to do it. So from the very top of the leadership, how you treat your employees, how you treat your some of the salespeople are contract people, some are sales, how you reflect that you want customers treated. All of these things addressed all the time. And I think a lot of times people don't do it. It feels hard. They tend to forget. Other fires come up that they're putting out. And yet, if they don't pay attention to this, their business will plateau and it will bomb. The competition that pays attention, it makes it really easy for them to move in and take over.
So what's your thinking though on when you're talking about being the failure to lead your brand? You're the leader of your business. You're leading your brand. You're doing the right thing at work or in your workplace. What's your thinking on the person when they're outside of work? Because I've seen some people where, and I always say to them, I go, you are your brand from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. And you've got to realize that when you're in your business, you're seen a particular way by the marketplace. When you're away from your business, that same marketplace is still looking at you if they know that you're related to that particular business. So you can't say, for example, you might be a dietitian and might be part of a health food store and you're preaching this message. You can't be seen walking around scoffing hamburgers and eating chips every time you're not in the workplace. That it's not congruent.
Okay, so this is a really good point. We touched it last time too. It's why it's really important to have a brand that's authentic and that you can live. You don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
But you do have to be authentic. So for me, I very much am about healthy diet, but I'm also about healthy diet and moderation. I'm not somebody who says, don't ever eat junk food. I'm not somebody who says, never scarf down that hamburger. I'm somebody who says, you've got to find the diet that's right for you, the one you can live with. And then you've got to live in a way that is fulfilling, is nurturing, is enriching. For some people, if you've got diabetes, for example, you may have to be more careful. Some people have more latitude. But I want to be really clear in my branding that I don't ever try and come across as the perfect person. Because then, I'm out in the world. Somebody's going to see me. They're going to point that finger. So I'm very clear that I'm fiery, sometimes a little too fiery. And that, I work on that. I'm also clear that I'm a connector. I'm also clear that if you see me in an airport, you're most likely going to see me talking to somebody. You're going to see me playing with the baby, petting the dog. Part of my brand is that connection. And if you see me out in the world, you're going to see, what you see is what you get. So very important. If you create a brand and, there's personal brands and business brands, and you've got to have, especially this comes up when you talk about working for a corporation and you've got your own brand, but then the corporation has a brand. You've got to make sure that who you are is a fit for the brand you're representing, whether it's your own business or somebody else's, because if it's really off, it's not going to work. Even in a 9-to-5, you can twist yourself into a pretzel so much.
I think that's perfect though, what you said about the brand has got to be authentic. And I think that comes back to the people that become part of your team within your business. They've got to fit the authenticity of business because they're also representing your business when they're away from it. So you can't have someone that can bluff you in an interview that you employ. And that's why when we've been employing people in the past, we've gone on their social media pages and we've stalked them beforehand, before we've even done the interview, to see what are they like when they're not in an interview setting. And you have a look and you go, oh no, they're not going to fit with our
Exactly.
particular brand. We can't be this way at work and then be that way outside of work. And I have been fooled a few times, and it's come back and bit me on the bum.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a perfect science. We do the best we can, but with social media today, if we are not congruent to the brand that we're representing, if we're just not a fit, especially if it's our own company more than ever, but even if we're an employee and we're representing the company, you can't be representing a certain kind of values, 9 to 5 or 9 to whatever you work, and then have different values when you're out in the world. It just doesn't work today. Too much visibility, too much amplification of both our brand and our own personal who we are. It's not the way it used to be, for better and for worse. Things get amplified. Our brand gets amplified both personally and in a business sense.
Okay. So Dr. K, if somebody wanted to reach out and talk to you more about this, if they have any questions, what's the best way of getting hold of you, learning more?
Best way is to go to my website. I know you'll have that posted, with this
Yeah, I'll have it in the show
podcast.
notes. Yeah.
But drkazlow.com, there's a contact page there. If you have questions about this, if you want to know anything about workshops that I do related to branding and influence and, any of the things that we've talked about, or any other concerns that you'd like to, to raise, please reach out. My number is on the website. Call me. Best to send me an email first so that we can set up a time that works. But part of my brand is that I do want to connect. So if there are things that stood out to you, if you have questions, if there are things that you need that would be helpful, reach out. Would look forward to speaking with you.
Okay, so just to rehash, let's quickly go over the 6 top 10 things of branding mistakes so far, because you're going to come on next week and you're going to cover the last 4. We're not going to leave a bigger break in between episodes, which we did last time, because we both just trying to connect with each other was quite difficult. So quick rehash of the top of the first 6, and then next week's going to be the next 4.
So number 1 is letting others define you. Okay? Letting it stems from lack of knowledge and personal issues. Number 2, not backing up your brand. Branding is a promise. You break the promise. Number 3, the big one that we talked about today, is not having an aligned brand strategy. Really key. Number 4 is not power connecting. Okay? At many different levels, with your market, with your brand, with your vision, with your audience, not connecting, and connecting in a deep, legitimate, authentic way. Number 5 is infuse your branding every place. Infuse your branding every place. Number 6 is failure to lead your brand. So you need to have a brand that's authentic to you and that you can live with, and then you need to lead it. And this is something that should become automatic. It's something that you do as part of, you go into, when I had my center, I went into the center every morning and I looked around. What is out of order? I talked to my staff, daily, anything that I need to know. Had staff meetings where we brought up, we didn't call it branding when I first opened the center, but they were things about what we stood for and core values and the flow of the office and marketing materials and issues with patients and clients. So you just want this to become a part of your routine. Not something that's onerous, not something that's heavy, but something that you do as part of your flow. People talk a lot about morning routines. Have a branding routine and keep these things fresh and keep these things, just check them. Let them be part of your business checkup and check in.
Okay, I think that's a great summary. You may see me wave my hand about it. I wasn't trying to wave you down at all. Just that there was a spider fell on my computer. And I was trying to get the spider off the keyboard, which it's just, I don't know, it's just where we live. We have plenty of spiders. We were reading something in the local paper the other day, and it was for the month of, it was giving stats for the previous month of April, and it said we had 17 snake bites, 20 spider bites, and 3 human bites that were presented to the hospital. And my daughter's going, geez, that's a high number of human bites. She didn't even look at the snake bites and the spider bites. I'm going, I thought the spider bites were quite high compared to snake bites. But yeah,
Oh my goodness.
that's what happens when you live in the tropics. So, Dr. Kate, thank you for coming on and doing part 2. And you're going to be back next week to do part 3. And I can't wait to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun, and look forward to hearing from our audience.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to Dr. K today. It was, I think the branding mistakes that people make, they seem really obvious, but they're mistakes that we all make. And I do apologise that it's been such a big gap between part 1 and part 2. So part 1, just as a reminder, was episode 140. There will be a link in the show notes, so you'll be able to find it really easily, or just go to wherever you listen to podcasts and go to episode 140 and go back and have a listen to it. But next week, we'll be bringing you part 3 of the top 10 branding mistakes that people make. So I know this has been a long episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know that I have. And I tell you, every time I talk to Dr. K, I learn so much, which is absolutely fantastic. If you enjoyed this episode and you've enjoyed previous episodes, please give us a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, probably the one you're listening to right now. So that's it for me. Look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now.
My name is Eric Hunley, and I host Unstructured. On Unstructured, I have intimate conversation with a diverse range of people. I've interviewed a presidential candidate and a felon, not the same person. I've even chatted with a musher. Yep, a sledder behind a pack of dogs. And in these conversations, we learn what drives these folks. Please, come check out Unstructured. You can find Unstructured wherever you listen to podcasts.
I did not grow up with very much money.
Money's energy.
Money is something that really scares me. You had about 60 grand in debt.
Money isn't the answer.
Somebody should just give me a lot of money.
My dream was to be the WWE wrestler, but you realize that your dreams change over the years.
Money is a tool. It's a key to a gate. And at the other side of the gate is the things that you really want to do with your life. It's the things that matter most to you. It's pursuing those values that make you ultimately happy.
Listen to Inspired Money at inspiredmoney.fm.
Welcome everybody to this promo for my show, Business with Super Joe Pardo, where I break down business lessons week after week after week after week after week. Whether you are new or a seasoned vet at business operations, my show will help you take your business game to the top. Looking forward to meeting you over at superjoepardo.com.